Welcome to DeFi High, the DeFi crypto and airdrops, DeFi University collaborative Monday through Friday show at 9 a.m. Pacific and noon on Eastern time. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a minute, but how's it going, David?
Doing well, Mike. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Let's go ahead and jump on into this because I feel like that we end up running out of time when things are starting to get good. So let's go ahead and jump on in.
All righty, man. So I think we left off yesterday on lesson 10, did we not?
Yes.
Lesson 10. Okay, so why don't we pick up from lesson 10? And then I think we're actually going to be able to finish Money Basics, the Money Basics course today. And then the last thing for me, Mike, is I just need to finish building out the quizzes. But why don't we just go back through 10, 11, and 12, and that will wrap up this first course. And then here, let me give you a sneak peek of what you can expect for the next one. So the next course here, and this is over on GitHub. I publish all my stuff on GitHub too. Crypto fundamentals. So that's going to be the next course that we start running through. Just wanted to give you a little bit of a sneak peek of what the content looks like here. Got all the video content that's being generated now. So let's hop in here to the digital IOU. Lesson 10, lesson 11, and lesson 12.
We've all done it, right? You owe a friend for coffee, you pull out your phone, open up an app like Venmo or PayPal, type in the amount, and boom, sent. It feels like magic, just pure instant digital money. But what if I told you that what you're seeing isn't actually money moving at all? That this whole system is really built on an illusion of speed. An illusion that's super convenient, yeah, but one that comes with some pretty big trade-offs you might not know about.
So, Mike, I think that these payment apps, a lot of them, when they're built kind of sort of on top of a blockchain, you could think of them almost like layer threes, kind of.
It's time to peek behind the curtain. All right, so first things first, we have to bust this idea of an instant payment because that number that pops up on your friend's screen, well, it's not quite what you think it is. When you send 20 bucks to your friend, not a single dollar has actually moved from your bank to theirs. Nope. What's really happened is the app has just updated its own internal scoreboard. It's basically a giant high-tech scorekeeper making a note that it owes your friend $20 and, well, you owe the app $20.
Or a ledger.
It's kind of like when you were a
Right.
kid. If a friend spotted you for a soda, you just say, hey, I owe you one. No money actually changed hands. It was just an understanding. Well, these huge tech companies are doing the exact same thing, just for millions of people with billions of dollars. So for every single payment between you and a friend inside the same app, the company is just changing numbers in its own private records. That's it. Real money only actually moves when somebody either loads money into the app from their bank or takes money out of it. Okay, so if it's all just one big IOU system, how in the world does it feel so seamless and so instant? Well, the way they pull it off is actually pretty brilliant. So we think we're sending money straight to our friend, peer-to-peer. But the reality is that the app is this massive, powerful middleman. Your bank funds the app's big holding account. They update your friend's balance in their app, and only way later, if your friend actually cashes out, does it go to their bank. The app is sitting in the middle of everything. So why the magic trick? Why the illusion? It's because the app is willing to take on a little bit of risk just to give you a fantastic experience. They front you and your friend the balance so it feels instant, while all the slow, clunky banking stuff happens in the background. Let's break it down. Step 1 is the only part that's truly instant. The app changes the score in its database. Done. But behind the scenes, that's when step 2 kicks off. The app begins the slow 1 to 3 day process of pulling that money from your bank account. And if your friend actually wants that cash in their bank account, that's step 3.
So, Mike, think about the difference in custody for the end user when you're comparing an app like this, which is basically every payments app, right? When
Yeah.
you compare these payments apps to, sending money truly peer-to-peer using crypto or DeFi. I mean,
Well, and not to mention the different stops on the traditional apps like Venmo where it can be held up. It can be frozen, it can be held up, it can a lot of things can happen. Whereas peer to peer, there's nothing stopping it.
right, because you own your money. That's the whole
Exactly.
point. Yeah.
That,
Another
that,
one to 3
that
days.
you're going to hear when you get involved in DeFi. You're going to hear these two terms a lot: self-custody and custody. So in a nutshell, what it means is when you're looking at these platforms and you're doing DeFi, I would suggest, I mean, this is just what I do, not financial advice, that you look for non-custodial platforms and non-custodial, to make sure that you keep control of your money. Otherwise, you might as well use the traditional banking system, because there's going to be the ability for them to freeze your assets and do different things like that. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So there really isn't much of a difference between TradFi and a lot of these centralized exchanges.
No.
It's almost more of like an illusion of crypto and DeFi than it
Yeah.
really is crypto and DeFi. I think to be a real DeFi operator and to actually hold crypto, that means you self-custody.
It
That
needs to be a
means
non-custodial platform.
Right, exactly. And so that's really the core difference between, any TradFi or payments app and DeFi. That's the real difference, is that in DeFi you actually own your own assets, but with these payment apps and traditional finance, you don't own it.
No.
You have an IOU or some type of a claim on it.
Have liquidity on Celsius, or have liquidity
Right.
on any centralized platform. Watch it go down and watch what happens. The debtors are going to get paid first. Any investors and things like that own stock, and they're going to be made whole first, and then whatever's left, you might see something after a long drawn out bankruptcy process. So people on that were on Celsius learn that very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's not just Celsius. It's
Oh
also,
yeah.
you could say it's even Coinbase too. I
Oh,
mean,
no, it's all of them, but it's just that was one that it actually happened to.
yeah. And even in the example of Coinbase, like, what if on ramp USDC through Coinbase, and then all of a sudden it says on your screen that you've got USDC and you swap into Bitcoin? Well, do you actually own that Bitcoin? And the answer is no. No, you don't. And if you try to send that Bitcoin off of the exchange, and for some reason Coinbase says to you, "Hey, hold on a second, we don't want you to be able to send that." Well,
Yeah.
if you don't have custody, then you don't have a say. Like,
No.
you don't actually own anything in that example. So, and that's,
It's basically an IOU. It's
it
it's
is.
the same as a bank. It's I owe you this much Bitcoin. I owe you this much Ethereum.
Right. Exactly right. And that's the core difference between TradFi, centralized exchanges,
Or
and
just
DeFi.
custodial and non-custodial.
Custodial and non-custodial. Yep.
A transfer. So yeah, that instant payment could take nearly a week to actually settle in the real world. Of course, a service this slick and convenient isn't really free. So how exactly are these companies making billions of dollars just by helping you and me split a pizza bill? They've got a few really clever ways. There are fees they charge businesses, they offer credit cards, they even analyze your data. But two of the absolute biggest moneymakers are those instant transfer fees, for when you don't want to wait 3 days, and the interest they earn on all the money just sitting in everyone's accounts. It's called the float, and it's basically a giant pool of our money that the company can invest and make a profit on. Now this number, this is probably the one most of us are familiar with. You could call it the price of impatience. And let me tell you, it adds up to a huge amount of revenue. Yep, paying about 1.75% is the cost of turning that slow, standard 3-day cash out into a transfer that hits your bank in about 30 minutes. You're literally paying a fee to jump the line that the system created in the first place. But this convenience comes with trade-offs that are much bigger than a few fees. And that brings us to the really important part, the hidden risks of treating your payment app like it's your bank account. And this chart really lays it all out. Your bank account, it's FDIC insured up to $250,000. If the bank fails, the government's got your back. Your payment app balance, usually not insured at all. If that company goes bust, your money could just vanish.
So there's a couple of, if we wanted to compare this to crypto or DeFi, if you have your assets that you self-custody, well, that's not insured. Like, you don't have FDIC insurance on the Bitcoin that you're self-custodying.
Absolutely
So,
not.
and if you make a mistake with, let's say, you're self-custodying USDC, well, if you make a mistake and you send that to the wrong person, then there's no customer service agent to call. There
There
you're
is
stuck.
a lot of responsibility. when it comes to self custody. So, you're kind of, you get what you pay for. It's like, yes, there are, there's pros and cons to both. And I'm glad you brought that up, because, that needs to be understood, that self custody comes with its own set of risks. It's like, yeah, with the custody platforms and stuff, if they go down, then you could potentially, lose your liquidity and things like that. But with self custody, we all know somebody who has Bitcoin on some old hard drive, or some old thumb drive or something like that, and they forgot the seed phrase, or they forgot their keys. And I have one that he has $500,000 sitting on an old hard drive, of Bitcoin, and he has the physical hard drive, but he lost access to it, and so he's hoping that one day he can get back into that. But that's that's part of being a big boy or a big girl, is you need to understand the risks and mitigate that as much as possible.
I think it's true self sovereignty and true responsibility. You have to have real self responsibility to be able to custody your own assets. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, because we're so used to having assets in the bank and thinking that we own that, when really we don't.
Well,
And
we're so used to a gated, curated environment, like financial. Everything is, the government, big brother, daddy is always there, to say, oh no, don't do that, don't do that. Keep your money here. It's, oh no, you can't invest in that. You don't have enough money, or you're not accredited. You're not adult enough. You don't understand the risks. We're used to that world. And DeFi is, yeah, you can do whatever you want for the most part, but again, it's not curated, it's not gated. And if you do something wrong, I've done it. Sent, crypto to the wrong address. I sent it to the I think they call it the Genesis address. And basically it's how you burn tokens. I had a Matic Pole, used to be called Matic, and I sent a couple $1,000s in the beginning. I copy and pasted the wrong address, and poof, there went a couple $1,000s.
yeah, man. And so, that type of thing, and there's no recourse. You can't do anything. It's final. So, that's something that you need to learn in crypto and DeFi, so that you avoid making mistakes like that. And that's why this DeFi high school content is so valuable, because you learn about, TradFi first, and then you can start to build your crypto and DeFi skill set slowly. Now, the account freeze stuff, if you self custody your own assets, the only way that you could ever have assets frozen is if you're holding like USDC, USDT, and there's a court injunction against your doxed address.
Yeah.
That could potentially happen.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're holding Bitcoin, or even Ethereum, there's no one to come in and freeze that. So it cannot be frozen. And there's no one to tell you whether you can send your Bitcoin or Ethereum. And there's no one to tell you, hey, you know what? You can't send it to this person. It's completely permissionless. So big difference.
If you send cash to the wrong person, it's incredibly hard to reverse. And the company can freeze your account whenever they want, for whatever reason they want, based on their terms of service. You just have way fewer protections. Bottom line is this: when you leave your money sitting in one of these apps, it's your money, but you're playing by their rules. You've traded the safety net of the federal banking system for the convenience of a tech company. Now, this doesn't mean you should run and delete all your apps. They're super useful tools. The key is to just use them smartly, so you get all the convenience without falling into any of the traps. And the strategy is actually really simple. Just treat the app like it's digital cash, not a savings account. Don't let a big balance build up in there. Cash it out regularly to your actual insured bank account. Always double check who you're sending money to, because fixing mistakes is a nightmare. And use it for what it's great at: small, easy payments between people.
Really quick, there are certain custodial platforms that are FDIC insured now. Uphold, for every account that you open with them, you can open multiple accounts. They're insured to up to $250,000. So it is a crypto platform, where you can buy and sell and trade crypto and stuff like that. But it does have insurance, so that it's starting to make its way into crypto. So I just wanted to drop that.
Yeah. So I guess what that must mean then is, if Uphold were to become bankrupt, I guess, or go bankrupt overnight, that user deposits would be insured up to 250K, right?
Well, and they monthly they release a full audit of it. It's a really good platform. I'm not affiliated with it in any way whatsoever. I use it from time to time, but they are fully backed. You know, all the assets they have on the platform is fully backed, and they have, they show an audit, proving that. So it's a very responsibly run platform, and not a lot of people talk about it, oddly enough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, FDIC insurance is something that a lot of people look for, uh, but I don't trust insurance.
It's it's a double-edged sword. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of people, they want that warm fuzzy, but nothing is 100%. Nothing's guaranteed because the FDIC, it's the government. What happens if something massive happens? Are they going to be able to cover every single dollar that's in every single institution that's FDIC insured? Probably not. So
yeah. I think that FDIC is probably like the gold standard for insurance up to $250,000.
yeah,
But for just insurance products in general, I really don't. I don't trust them. But for FDIC, I would probably trust that. So. Yeah, I'm just happy that I don't have to even think about that. Like
yeah.
for me, the whole idea of using Uphold or any centralized exchange for any reason is just anathema. Like, yeah, away from me, bad. you know.
Actually know and trust. So in the end, it really all comes down to a personal calculation. There's no doubt these apps have made our lives way easier, but now that you know it's all built on this complex IOU system with its own set of rules and its own risks, you have to ask yourself, is all that convenience really worth the crown? That's a question we should all be thinking about.
Yeah, is the convenience worth it? That's a great question to ask and answer for yourself. I mean, for me, these payment apps, um, the only way I will ever use these is if someone wants to send me money, and that's the only app that they use. Otherwise, I never use them for any purpose. Not anymore. I used to like these things, and then I learned about crypto and DeFi. So, you know, um, digital IOUs. It's just, I think it's just better to not have the IOU at all, because if you can just instantly settle a transaction, then you don't need the IOU. And the convenience of using the app, it makes everything look so fast when really the settlement can take days. But if you're using crypto, then the settlement is actually instant. So yeah, big difference there. Big difference. Let's take a look at lesson 11. Why transfers take days. And
By design.
it is, man. It's got to be.
Oh
It's
no, it 100% is. Like we talked about before, friction, any friction that they can introduce gives them longer to hold that liquidity to earn, a yield off of it, or to earn interest, or, to charge fees, or, because, if you pay an extra fee, you can get it expedited, and it's all ways to make more money.
Check this out, Mike. The ACH system, built in 1974, says most bank transfers in the US go through ACH, the automated clearinghouse. It was created in 1974 to replace physical check transport between banks. So this was tech built, what is that, 50 years ago? For what? But why are we still using that? And this is what you're talking about, Mike, with that float profit. So in transit, when money is in transit, it sits somewhere. That somewhere is typically earning interest. The longer the delay, the more the interest earned. Wow. So they call that a perverse incentive. So there's a perverse incentive built into the system here, not just because we're using tech from 50 years ago to send
Banks,
money.
banks are a bunch of perverts.
It's one of those economic terms, where
No.
it's just referring to the incentive, saying that there's something wrong with it, and there is, man. So let's go through this video content. Let's see what this is all about.
All right, let's just jump right into this. We live in a world where pretty much everything is instant, right? Messages, videos, getting food delivered to your door. But Have you ever just stopped and thought, why does sending money feel like it's stuck in the dark ages? That's the big mystery we're going to unpack.
You've definitely felt this. It's that super common frustration. You go to pay a bill, you send some cash to a friend, and then you just wait. It honestly feels like your money packed a little suitcase and is taking a long, scenic road trip while you're just stuck waiting for it to show up. So, what is going on?
I mean, this right here just shows you how wild the whole thing is. You can send a message, a whole chunk of data, to the other side of the planet in the blink of an eye, milliseconds. But a simple bank transfer, we're talking 2, 3, sometimes even more days for it to settle. It doesn't make any sense. And here's the thing you really have to get. This delay isn't happening because we don't have the technology to move money instantly. Oh, we absolutely do. The real problem is that the system we all rely on was actually designed this way, on purpose, for a world that, frankly, doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, so to really understand the why, we've got to jump in a time machine. Let's pull back the curtain on the old school architecture that's causing this massive digital traffic jam.
1800s.
I know. Back in my day,
Back
we
in the
sent-
1900s.
we sent money in the winter uphill, 5 miles both ways.
we gave our money to the Wells Fargo stagecoach.
Look, man, ACH, I had no idea it was built in 1974.
All of it.
Um,
All of our current banking technology is all, like 1970s or older.
and that's probably why it still runs on Cobalt, because
Well,
Cobalt
and
is from like the
Well,
60s.
it's why that they're pushing back so hard on crypto and this new technology is it gets rid of all the friction that they charge fees on. It gets rid of, them being able to, us being forced to, them to custody our liquidity. Just all of that power that they kept it just eliminates all that. That's why they are in Washington right now fighting so hard against the Clarity Act and making sure that the verbiage in that is beneficial to them. Like, not being able to earn yield on stable coins. They want to be the ones that earn yield on our stables. So, this is why we're doing these basics. Is you need to understand the basics of the TradFi and DeFi so that you understand the relationship and why it is that DeFi is such a revolutionary technology. And
it really is.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's because you own your assets, and it's peer to peer, and it's trustless, and it's permissionless. These are all the things that these banks rely on. They are trusted institutions, except that they suck. They are, yeah, I know, trusted to suck really bad. They are permissioned environments where you have to get permission to even open an account. And then a lot of the times you have to get permission to spend your own money because you don't actually own it. The bank does. So they're not trustless. They're not permissionless. And, all of these fees that they charge, that's their business model. The business model is to charge fees and to slow things down. Whereas it's the exact opposite in crypto and DeFi. And that's why these banksters are writing that legislation in Washington. And that's why it hasn't been voted on yet, because the DCIA and that Clarity Act, those are not beneficial pieces of legislation for like the average user of crypto and DeFi. In fact, they're really great for the banks, but I think that's why Coinbase pulled out of that. They
support.
Couldn't endorse
Yeah,
it.
they pulled their support. And that's where the battle's going on right now is love them or hate them, Coinbase and, all of them that are in Washington, kind of, lobbying on crypto's behalf. Yes, there's a lot of things I don't like about Coinbase. It's, one of the major platforms that I use to onboard. And we've talked about this with USDC. You can buy USDC for free. You can send it for free. It's a great way to onboard your liquidity. Would I keep the majority of my crypto there? Absolutely not. But that being said, they do want crypto to be successful. That their whole business model is modeled around crypto and DeFi. They're starting to launch loans. They have Bitcoin and Ethereum loans. They where they're leveraging Morpho, another DeFi platform to facilitate, borrowing and lending of those assets. They Aerodrome here in a couple of months is about to launch a new platform that's multi-chain. They're going to be integrating parts of that onto Coinbase to where you're going to be able to invest in liquidity pools and earn yield off providing liquidity. This is evolving, and they want to ensure that the legislation is favorable, for them to be able to do that, because that's their business model. They are forward thinking. Banks are trying to drag us back to the dark ages of the 1970s technology of ACH and that friction, so that because they're all in that mindset of we need to earn those fees that way. And they need to change their thinking and understand there's still profit to be made in DeFi. You just got to change how you do it. And you have to incentivize people to keep their liquidity with you. You can't just, mandate that the government tell you the only place that you can put your money is in the bank. So,
yeah, man, no kidding. And I think that over time, the banks are going to have no choice but to adopt DeFi and crypto rails, but they're going to do it kicking and screaming. So we'll see. We'll see. I think it's going to work out, though. I'm hopeful for the future.
Main character in our story, the Automated Clearinghouse, or as you'll hear it called, ACH. Now, this is the network that's doing the heavy lifting for most of the electronic money transfers in the US. And back in the day, it was a game changer. It was designed to stop flying literal bags of paper checks all over the country.
Wow. I mean, this timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? The ACH network was born in 1974. That's decades before the first iPhone, before most of us even knew what the internet was. We are literally running our 21st century digital economy on a system that was designed when Nixon was president.
And here's exactly how that 1974 thinking works. The system was built for something called batch processing. So instead of your transfer being sent the second you hit confirm, the bank just kind of collects all of the day's transactions and puts them in one big pile. Then, usually overnight, it processes that entire batch all at once. Think of it like waiting for the mail to come just once a day, instead of getting packages delivered the moment they're ready.
This quote just nails it. We haven't actually rebuilt the engine of our financial system. We've just, bolted a smartphone holder and a GPS onto the dashboard of a 50-year-old car and are trying to pretend it can keep up. The core is still old. But you've got to be
That's
asking.
so funny, dude. I've got to look at that again. Hold on.
Basically, yeah.
Look at that.
What we interact with seems like it's upgraded technology. When you go on your bank app, but behind the scenes, it's still the same old fucking system.
All it did was strap a smartphone on top of an old car.
Yeah.
So,
It took a 1974 Pinto.
yeah,
And,
I know.
freaking put a nice touch screen in it.
That's hilarious.
Keep up.
Lipstick on
Core
a
is
pig.
still old.
I know.
But you've got to be asking, if the tech is so outdated, why haven't we just replaced it? Well, this is where the story takes a, let's say, uncomfortable turn. It turns out the delay is actually very, very profitable. And that really is the key question,
Right,
isn't it?
for them.
We know for a fact that faster systems exist. I mean, think about Zelle. That's pretty much instant. So if the tech is sitting right there, what's the real reason this old, slow system is still the default? Well, the answer comes down to this powerful two-word concept. It's something that drives a huge part of the financial world, but one that most of us have
Money.
Money.
MOAR.
never even heard of. It's called the float. So what on earth is it? Well, the float is basically the interest that gets earned on your money while it's in that weird limbo state. After it's left your account, but before it has actually landed in the other person's account. For those couple of days, the money is held by financial institutions. And guess what? They can earn interest on it. And we are not talking about a few cents here. When you take a tiny bit of interest and you multiply it by millions of transactions and trillions of dollars that are in transit every single day, it adds up fast. We're talking about billions of dollars in revenue for the financial system made just from this delay.
And so they don't want to have to figure out how to replace that revenue, right? But I think that they're going to have no choice.
It's a huge incentive.
Think about it. 1% on $1 trillion is $10 billion. Just to kind of give you an idea of, because there's trillions of dollars that are being moved, from banks and, to banks and cross border and, payments being made, through Visa and MasterCard. So you have trillions upon trillions of dollars. If every year they're making 1%, they're making $10 billion in profit just by, having this friction in. And that's just an example, example numbers. That's not what's going on. But I just want to give people like an understanding that, that this is by design. This friction is by design.
Yeah, no kidding.
To maybe not fix the problem too quickly. So, okay, we know there's a delay, and now we know there's a big profit motive behind it. But where does the time actually go? Let's follow the money step by step on its slow little journey.
All right, so day 0, that's when you hit send. All your bank does is put your request in a line. Then on day 1, it gets bundled into that big overnight batch we talked about and sent out. Sometime on day 1 or maybe day 2, the other bank gets the instruction, but they still have to check everything. And then finally on day 2 or 3, the money is actually there. Every single one of these steps, the waiting, the batching, the checking, it all adds time.
And compare this, Mike, to if I wanted to send you USDC, well, that would settle instantly. It's almost instantaneous, especially if you use like Base or Plasma, one of these really fast chains. But even if you use mainnet, it settles in just like, a minute or maybe 2. So yeah, that completely replaces this ancient 3-day journey.
I'll tell you though, sometimes when you're sending crypto, a minute or 2 seems like a fucking eternity.
It does. It does sometimes.
You're sending like 10 grand and you're like, you put the address in there, you double and triple checked it, you did a test transaction. The test transaction goes through in like 15 seconds. And then like 2-3 minutes later, you're waiting for that 10 grand to show up and you're just like starting to sweat bullets. You're like, did I mess something up?
Yeah. It's so funny because when we're using TradFi products, if you send a transfer of several $1,000s using a traditional bank, did you ever experience that? I hope it's going to land. I really never did. I never really thought like, oh, it's not going to land. It's not going to happen. But in crypto, it's just so novel and it's new, so it does, especially bridging sometimes, man, that can be still to this day can be kind of uncomfortable and expensive sometimes. So yeah, man, but this 3-day journey, this is going away.
And every hour of delay adds to that profitable flow.
And hey, if you think that sounds slow, just try sending money across the border. That's when your money's little road trip turns into this super expensive globe-trotting odyssey with a whole bunch of layovers.
So why is that? Well, it's because your bank here probably doesn't have a direct connection to a bank in, say, Japan. So the money has to hop between several correspondent banks to get there. It's got to deal with different rules and regulations in each country. It goes through multiple compliance checks. And of course, it has to stop to get converted to a different currency.
So really quick,
relay rate.
That's one of the things about crypto is smart contracts and mechanisms like that. So KYC, AML, anti-money laundering is AML, KYC, know your customer. These are all things that by regulation are required for any legitimate financial transfers or deals. So with crypto, all of this can be automated, and that's what speeds it up. Is it doesn't require manual processes of people checking and verifying that everything is on the level. It can all be automated. That's what streamlines this process and is getting rid of those what they call intermediaries. So you're going to hear that term a lot too. So
yeah, what I think that code is law, and as long as your code is excellent and open source and publicly available where anyone can check it, then there's no need for KYC AML. I think that simply is a way for governments to steal from you. But if you've built a protocol and that protocol is public and audited and anyone can read through the code, then I think the code should be law, not what some institution says needs to be law. But in DeFi and crypto, none of these international hurdles exist. They're all, if they exist, they're intentionally imposed.
Yes.
Yeah. So if there's KYC AML, it's because the protocol imposed that on its customers. But it doesn't need to be like that. Any protocol can operate internationally anywhere in the world on crypto and DeFi rails. And there isn't a conversion stop for currency. There are no correspondent banks with multiple hops. There are not different systems and regulations. It doesn't matter. There are no compliance checks. It's just whatever you wrote into the code. So all of these hurdles are completely eliminated by DeFi, completely. And that's the beauty of it. It really is. It's kind of like the Wild West right now. And I kind of hope it stays that way.
Ace adds more time and, you guessed it, more fees. And here's what that looks like for you. A domestic transfer is slow, yeah, but an international one can take 3 to 5 days, sometimes way longer, and it can cost you a pretty hefty fee. Like
I thought that XRP was going to solve for international transfers.
30 to 50 bucks. The complexity is real, but so is the profit that's getting skimmed off at every single step.
So, is there any hope? Are we just stuck with this 1974 clock forever? Well, the good news is the future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed yet.
You see, instant payment networks are already up and running. There's the RTP network, the Federal Reserve's own FedNow system that just launched, and of course, Zelle, which works instantly because all the banks involved just agree to settle up with each other later on. The tech isn't the problem anymore. It's getting everyone to actually use it.
Well, the tech is still the problem because if you've ever tried to use any of these systems, the ACH and the FedNow and Zelle, those are permissioned. And so if you need to send more than a couple $1,000s to someone, Zelle isn't going to do it. If you need to be able to send a wire transfer to someone at 9 p.m., you're not going to be able to do it. If you need to be able to send an ACH transfer but have it received instantly on the weekend, well, most of the time you're not going to be able to do it. So these systems, even though sometimes they kind of work better than they did in 1970, that's still nowhere even close to the speed and convenience and reliability of crypto.
Well, again, it's a cell phone strapped to the top of a Pinto.
Yeah, it is. That's such a good analogy, man.
And this chart just lays it out so clearly. You've got the old ACH system, which takes days and only works on business days. Then you've got something like FedNow, which is instant and runs 24/7. And then you have crypto, which is its own parallel universe, settling in seconds or minutes, anytime, anywhere in the world. And this really helps explain a big part of crypto's appeal. It's not just about speculation. For a lot of people, it's a fundamentally different and often much better set of rails for moving value around. It just completely sidesteps that old clunky system of correspondent banks and overnight batches.
You see that? It exists outside of and above this regular financial system here, where look, there's the bag of money, and all these bankers are just staring at the bag of money as it goes around this circle, this wheel, and they each just get their little piece, as it goes around. But then you've got crypto and DeFi, and that must be like Ethereum or something up there. And this looks pretty fast, and there's no one in between. It's direct peer-to-peer. So I kind of like this one up above. What do you say, Mike? I don't like the circle.
Sorry, my cat's falling in love with my microphone or something.
And let's just take a second to remember why any of this really matters. Because look, if you're just splitting a pizza with a friend, a few days delay is annoying, sure. But if you're sending emergency funds to your family overseas, every single one of those days is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and you know what? No one has to wait for these transfers any longer. This stuff is real now. You can use this now. You can run your entire life on it now. It's just a matter of education.
Well, and to be fair to XRP, I mean, you can. I've used XRP to send money to my cousin who's down in Antigua, down in the Caribbean, running his charter boat. I've sent him money before, and I used XRP. I just sent him XRP. He put it in his Coinbase account, and then he swapped it into USDC, and off he went. But I mean, you can do that with any crypto, though. You can do that with stable coins, and you don't have to worry about the volatility. When it comes to cross-border payments or remittances or the movement of value, unless it's an asset, like an RWA or something like that, I would prefer, if it's going to just be a token, I would prefer that it be a stable.
Me too. Me too. So I prefer Bitcoin, Ethereum, stables, and
Yeah.
yield-bearing stables.
Yes.
Like if I was going to send someone XRP, I might send them Fartcoin instead because it's basically the same thing. But they're both. I think they're both memes. So like that does it, but it does solve the cross-border payments problem though. Like you can move value across borders using XRP.
But
You
again,
absolutely can.
You could
can use
literally use
anything.
Bitcoin if you wanted. But
Yeah.
and just so people know, it's not that we have anything personal against XRP. We're just very logical in our thinking. Ripple launched RLUSD, their own stable coin, because they talked to banks and the banks told them, we don't want to move value with XRP. If we move $1 billion and it fluctuates to the downside 1%, we just lost $10 million in the transaction.
Right.
We don't want to use XRP to move value. And so that's why they launched RLUSD, which, by the way, last time I looked, it was like 60% of the RLUSD is on ETH mainnet, not even on the XRP ledger. So I digress. Let's get back to the lesson.
So, Mike, I have a personal problem with XRP.
All right.
Just for the record.
David has a personal. Tell us where it touched you, David. Tell us
I know, it's horrible.
Show us on the doll. Where did it touch you?
It was horrible, Mike. The Ripple lab.
The human cost of slow money is very, very real.
So, all this leaves us with one final and I think crucial question. As these new instant systems become more common, will they just become the new normal for everyone? Or will the old, slow, but very profitable system stick around as the default, turning speed into a premium feature? A luxury that you and I have to pay extra for. It's definitely something to think about the next time you hit send, and that waiting game begins all over again.
So, Mike, you think that these banks are going to try to write that legislation in such a way that they're able to like keep their business models intact and then make the speed of crypto and DeFi like something that you have to pay extra for in some way? Do you think that's going to happen?
If it's up to them, they're going to attach any friction and they're going to attach any way to charge a fee. Yeah. I mean, basically, they're gonna find any way possible because they have a certain bottom line that they currently have. Because they have investors and they have a fiduciary responsibility to those investors to be profitable. So this technology, if it just rolled out and it was the way that it was designed to where there's no friction, there's no fees, it's instant, they would go bankrupt. There's no way for them to profit. And so that's why they're fighting so hard in this legislation, is to ensure that we can't earn yield on our stable coins, that they have to be the ones that custody. They might introduce some friction to where they can charge a premium to move the money faster, like David's talking about. So yeah,
I mean, check it out. Like so Bitcoin settles in 10 minutes, 24/7 globally. Ethereum settles in seconds to minutes globally. And stable coins can move value across borders without any of these correspondent banks. So it's really just simply faster and cheaper and better in every way. So yeah, man, I think, Mike, we're almost at the end of the first course.
Okay.
So lesson 12 here, man. This is the last one. This is pretty cool. And then tomorrow we're going to start course number 2 in DeFi High School, which is entitled Crypto Fundamentals. So we're going to get started on that tomorrow. Let's take a look through this last one. Your money, your control. All right, the illusion of ownership. This is kind of what we've been talking about as like the underlying theme, throughout this first course, right? Custody, self-custody versus not, So let's just see here. I want to take a look at these images a little bit before we get started. The spectrum of control. Wow. Physical cash, crypto in your own wallet. So that's a good comparison because I really do think of crypto in my wallet as cash. I think of them as the same thing. If I've got USDC or USDT in my wallet, that to me is cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the bank account, I guess, is in the middle. The payment app is kind of just built on top of the bank account. And then the crypto exchange is kind of like a payment app built on top of a bank too. Very institutional. This is a great image, man. That's really good. Okay, so let's go ahead and play through this. This will be an interesting one.
You know, we use money all the time, right? Every single day. But have you ever really stopped to ask who actually controls it? Well, today we're going to dig right into that question. So let's just get right to it. I'm going to ask you a question, and I bet your first thought is, duh, of course it's my money. But the real answer, well, it's a lot more complicated than that, and it just might change how you see your bank account forever.
Here's a different way to think about it. Your relationship with your bank is way more like you're renting an apartment than it is like you're owning a house. Sure, you've got rights, but every single one of them comes with some conditions.
All right, so let's really dive into.
So what rights do you have? I think you've probably got something more like temporary privileges that can be revoked at any time. And I think that's important to understand. Like, you don't have any rights. Like, you have like a list of privileges that the bank can say, hey, you know what? Sorry, but right now you can't withdraw that money in cash because we don't want you to. Or sorry, you know what? You're not allowed to make that payment to that merchant because we don't like that merchant. Or, oh, you want to send money internationally to your grandma? Well, that's going to take 7 days.
Well, it's important to people to understand, not just in this, but in everything. A right isn't something that's granted. A right is something that you are born with, and we decide as a society if we allow, governments or whomever to infringe upon those. Basically, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it because there's a difference between a right and a rule or a law or something like that. If something is a law, that's not a right. That is the government or some institution saying we're granting you this ability. So I know it's nuanced, but in a nutshell, it's important that people understand that.
Yeah, rights come from God, and the government cannot grant you a right. The government can take your rights away and give you a list of privileges that are temporary. And the same thing with these institutions, like these banks do the same thing. It's just that you have this illusion of control. And that's the problem. I think that's what we need to be able to break with this education is people need to not be deluded into thinking that they have, ownership or a right to the money in their own bank accounts, because you don't. It's a temporary privilege that the bank grants you and that they can revoke at any time. And so that is completely different than what you experience in crypto and DeFi, where you have real, when you self-custody, then you have real sovereignty and real responsibility, though. There's real responsibility that comes with that. So
Yeah,
you
don't get into DeFi, don't get into crypto unless you're willing to put your big boy or big girl, pants on.
you got to put on those britches.
Yeah.
Every single one of them comes with some conditions.
You do.
All right,
Yeah.
so let's really dive into this idea, this analogy of renting versus owning.
And when you put it side by side like this, it's actually kind of striking, isn't it? When you're renting, you can live there, sure, but the landlord makes the rules. It's the exact same deal with your bank. You can spend and deposit your money, but you don't actually control the system itself. The bank does.
Right. See, this is the most important thing here, is that the bank makes the rules. The bank owns your money. The bank gives you temporary privileged access to it, and the bank can take that away at any moment. And for no reason. You don't even need to be made aware of the reason. You'll just, go to an ATM and try to pull out cash and your card won't work. And you'll get a letter in the mail a week later from the bank saying, hey, yeah, sorry, we closed your account. That's all. And you should expect a check in the mail for your balance in 6 months. And you can do nothing about it. It's just, sorry. And that's completely different than what you experience when you custody your own assets in DeFi.
So here's the bottom line. It feels like your money, and that's because you get to use it every day. But that access, it's really just granted to you by the bank. They're the landlord, and they can absolutely change the terms of your lease. Okay, so if the bank is the landlord, then what are the house rules? Let's take a look at them. Think of this as the fine print in your financial lease agreement. You've got withdrawal limits, account freezes. Now look, most of these rules are in place for pretty good reasons, like stopping fraud. But they all point to the same single idea. Your access is conditional. Here's a
Right.
perfect real-world example. Ever tried to deposit more than 10 grand in cash?
Or
The second
withdraw.
you do, you'll
Right. So, Mike, what has your experience been when you try to withdraw, any large sum of money?
Well, we talked about this, multiple times, so far. Is, I mean, when I was flipping classic cars, I went in to get, it was around 10 grand. It was just over 10 grand. And they started asking me a bunch of questions. Why do you need it? What are you going to use it for? Who's the person you're going to be giving it to? Like, what the hell? I thought she was joking, but yeah,
I know,
it shows you that they don't see it as your money.
because it's not. And, look, you don't have to answer any of those questions, but they can still say, if you don't answer them, they can say, hey, we're not going to let you make this transfer.
Yeah.
So it's like, that should be a wake up call. You don't actually own anything if you have assets in a bank.
bank is legally required to report that to the government. It's a standard rule for sure, but it's a great example of how this whole system operates completely outside of your control.
Okay, so a lot of these rules are just kind of humming in the background most of the time. But let's talk about those real-world situations where you can suddenly find yourself, well, locked out of your own financial home.
And trust me, account freezes happen way more often than you might think. Maybe you're on vacation and buy something unusual, boom, fraud alert. Or it could be something much more serious, like a legal dispute. Either way, the big takeaway here is that someone else, not you, has the power to hit the pause button on your money. And it's really important to zoom out for a second. For many of us, having this kind of conditional access is actually a huge luxury. I mean, we're talking about billions of people around the world who face way, way harsher realities, from governments that can freeze accounts of protesters in an instant to hyperinflation that can literally make a lifetime of savings worthless overnight.
Right. But here's the thing, though. This is referring to, unbanked people. But anyone who doesn't have a traditional bank account, if they have a cell phone, then they can operate in crypto and DeFi.
Well,
So,
some of the places that I've been in the military, that one of the big things that people need to worry about is getting robbed. It's in a lot of these countries, if you're carrying cash or gold or silver or anything like that, it's very easy for them to take that. If you have crypto and it's on the ledger, they can take your phone, they can do a lot of different things, and they don't necessarily have access to that. So all
right.
you got to do is just know your seed phrase, and now you have your liquidity back. So it's
Exactly.
Starlink, the combination of Starlink and crypto, I don't think people understand how much that's going to change the world. That connectivity and that giving people access no matter where you're at in the world. You can be in Antarctica and there's Starlink access now.
Right.
You could be anywhere on this earth in the middle of the ocean, middle of freaking Siberia, and you can be doing finance. You can be buying and selling and doing whatever you want nowadays. So,
So, Mike, I was just thinking about that though. So, I happen to really like DoorDash. And so if you're in Antarctica, man, like you're not going to get DoorDash. You're not. So what are you going to be able to buy?
some penguin shows up with Chipotle.
So all of this really leads to a much bigger idea, what you could call the spectrum of control. See, every single form of money involves a trade-off between the convenience we all want and the control we have to give up to get it. So, on one end of that spectrum, you've got good old-fashioned physical cash. When you hold a dollar bill in your hand, you truly own it. Nobody can remotely freeze it. Nobody can stop you from handing it to someone else. It is maximum control, period.
Somebody
And
can
then,
steal.
True, that's true. Somebody can steal it, but you also have custody. So
Yes.
that's a good example of self-custody.
all the way on the other end, you've got your bank account. It is incredibly convenient, right? For paying bills online, for shopping, for doing business globally. But as we've just been talking about, all that convenience comes at a price. You're giving up a good chunk of personal control. And this chart really lays it all out. As you can see, there is no single best option. It's all about these trade-offs. The more control you want, like you get with physical cash or if you hold your own crypto, the more you usually have to sacrifice convenience.
That is very true. if you don't know how to operate your wallet easily, then it can be moderately inconvenient. That's true. If you use a hardware wallet, then that can be sometimes moderately inconvenient. But the trade-off there is you have the highest level of control because you have sovereignty.
Well,
So
one thing that we're going to start seeing happen though is we're going to start seeing these user interfaces and the retail facing, interfaces. That's what a UI is short. If you're going to hear that phrase a lot too, the UI, it's a user interface. So your bank app, that you're currently using, that's a UI. Anything that you interact with to, do financial things or just anything in general. Windows is a UI, but as this technology advances and as it gets integrated into the financial system, you're going to find UIs that simplify a lot of these DeFi processes. And that's why this education that David's giving you is so important, is to understand what is going on behind that UI. Because if you can understand how this stuff works, you can, one, understand, what you're doing with your liquidity and the risks that you're potentially taking, and of course the benefits, but also you can figure out ways to do arbitrage. There's ways that you can find out to do advanced, strategies to where, maybe you're borrowing Bitcoin and then you're taking that Bitcoin, using, Bitcoin as leverage, borrowing Bitcoin, taking that Bitcoin and going, putting it into a liquidity pool and doing these different things with it that most people out there, maybe they're not aware of. So it's important to start before you invest a single dollar, is understand and learn about DeFi and slowly work your way into it. Don't just ape into this. Don't just start dumping money into liquidity pools if you're not intimately familiar with how it works, because you're going to be exit liquidity. Just like if you try to, trade, or if you try to invest in meme coins, if you don't understand how to do this, you are going to be exit liquidity.
yeah, and guess what, Mike? You gonna learn real quick.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
a painful lesson and an
Yeah,
expensive.
we call that market tuition. So
Yes.
you really want to avoid paying market tuition if you can. Look, everyone is going to end up paying some type of market tuition, but you don't want it to be, a number that you can't recover from. So you got to
Yes.
be careful, and that's why you learn first.
And you end up taking on more personal security risks too.
So look, the big takeaway here is not that banks are bad or that you shouldn't trust them. They provide services
No, I think banks are bad, and you shouldn't trust them.
I was waiting for that. I was waiting for
Yeah,
David to chime in on that one.
yeah.
that are incredibly valuable. The whole point is just to understand the relationship you're in so you can make empowered, conscious choices about your money.
That is so important. And it's not just for your money. It comes down to like medical stuff too. Like you need to be able to advocate for yourself, but you can't do that if you don't understand the system that you're operating in. So for the financial stuff, look, everyone has to use these products in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And so you've got to understand what they are. These are products. You can't think of it as like a bank account. It's a financial product. And would you ever buy a car if you didn't know anything about the car? Like, no, you wouldn't. Would you ever buy a sandwich if you like, let's say I like turkey, but there's roast beef over there. If you didn't know anything about the sandwich,
Well,
you
if you
wouldn't
just
buy
looked at the menu and it just said sandwich, you just
like,
bought sandwich, and who knows what you're going to get.
right. These are products. You got to think of these as products. And when you go into a bank, you're buying one of these financial products.
Yes.
And, it's abstract a little bit. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult to understand. But yeah, man, these choices, these financial choices, they have really big impacts on every area of our lives. We've got 30 seconds left. And I know that we're just about out of time. Let's see if we can just get through the end of this first course. And then, Mike, tomorrow we can start on, I think it's crypto fundamentals.
Perfect.
So, asking yourself these kinds of questions, it helps you go from being just a passive tenant to being an active participant in your own financial life. It's about knowing the rules of the game so you can decide how you want to play it.
And that leaves us with one last kind of provocative thought to chew on. If the bank system we use every day is basically a rental, what would it actually mean to truly own your digital money? That question, well, that's the question that's reshaping the entire future of finance as we speak.
That's right. That's exactly right, man. Wow, what a good way to end that first course, man. That's great. So, Mike, I guess tomorrow we're going to get started on course number 2, man.
Yep.
It's going to be awesome.
Yep, absolutely. So later on today, 1:30 Eastern time, I'll be on the Morrow Newfall show, and we're going to be talking about uh, funds. Where so basically like tokenized funds, and using that technology, the new crypto technology, to 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 modernize some of these offerings, these institutional offerings that are out there. And I'm going to be mentioning, I did an interview a while back with Kevin. I'm going to have him on again real soon. He's about to actually launch their legal fund, and that they're claiming, and very reputable guy. He owns a law firm. He's a friend of Taylor's, my brother, and they're going to be offering 20 to 30% returns, uncorrelated to the market. And so it's basically a legal fund that they use to fund their lawsuits. Their large lawsuits against a lot of these large corporations that usually get settled out of court. They decide as lawyers if it's worth going through the long litigation to earn, and then whenever they get paid, then it goes to the investors and things like that. So anyway, should be
Tokenize that.
interesting.
It should
What's
wrap
that?
wrap that into a token.
That's what he's doing. Is
Awesome.
basically they're doing it. Yeah, I'll get into that another time. And
Cool,
then
man.
tonight we have Crypto and Chill. Me and Jeff will be talking, and David, you're more than welcome to join us. We're just going to be chatting about the markets and just relaxing a bit tonight. So
Sweet, man. I'd love to see you there.
awesome. All right. Well, we'll talk to you all later. And until next time, Veteran Crypto out.
Peace.